and welcome to More Than Clothes with me, your host, Sarah Ryan. In this podcast, we'll explore the connection between style, identity, confidence, and mindset, and why getting dressed is never just about clothes. Welcome to this first episode of More Than Clothes with Sarah Ryan. This episode is just going to be an introduction to me and a little bit about my history, because I haven't shared much of it, to be honest. And when I got into the work that I'm doing now, people just see how, where I am right now. And of course, there was a whole history leading up to this. And I think it's important to share it because I can relate to an awful lot of my clients that I work with. I have walked the walk myself and I haven't shared that much about it. So this, if you like, is my origin story. And I'm going to go back to, I suppose, school days. Don't worry, I'm not going to go through absolutely everything. But I think it's important for you to know where I started on my journey that I find significant, at least. So I was lucky enough to have a nice school life, if you want to call it that. I had nice friends. I did well in school. That was great. It was actually a great time for me because I was kind of going through the system like I was on a lazy river. I couldn't go wrong. There was no big choices to be made, at least, for many years there wasn't. But, of course, school had to come to an end, which many people are happy about. And I was, happy to get going, but I was extremely nervous because I didn't know what I wanted to do in life. And choosing a career path at 17 seemed so outrageous to me. And I always talked to people about what they wanted to do. And I was so envious that they knew what they wanted to be when they grew up. I was never that person. I never dreamt of being something or doing something particular. Actually, I lie. The only thing I felt in my bones was that I wanted to work for myself. I don't know where that came from, or you could question whether that was innate. I don't know. I would consider it innate. I was born with it in my bones. I wanted to be my own boss, do something that I was passionate about. And I remember as a kid kind of make-believe businesses, creating like computer screens from like cardboard boxes, and I would change the paper. Like this was me kind of playing. I don't know what age I was when I was doing that, but I remember in my head thinking, I'm creating a business here. This is what you do in business. So that is all I knew I wanted to do. But that always felt like a dream to me, like it wasn't something within my reach or my grasp, because I didn't have role models in terms of someone working for themselves. I didn't know anybody like that in my immediate circle anyway. And growing up, it was like, work hard, get a job, get married, have kids, tick the boxes. And I just never felt those boxes were for me. And in school, you're not taught how to get in tune, I think, with yourself. And that was a big part of the problem, because when I had to make a decision, we had to kind of fill out forms here in Ireland. The CAO form probably fills a lot of people with dread, as it did me. You had to put down, I don't know, a few choices, 3 choices or whatever, in terms of college courses and colleges that you wanted to go to. And I remember writing things down on that form that I had no emotional connection to. I wasn't excited about it. I was doing it because you were supposed to do it. You were supposed to go to college after school. That's why I was doing it. So I put down options that I had no graw for. That's love in Irish, but I had no graw for it. And anyway, long story short, I got into Trinity College, which is the most prestigious university in Ireland and one of the most prestigious in Europe. I was like, oh, wow, you got into Trinity. Wow. And I was like, yeah, okay. And by the way, I chose French and Spanish. French I had done in school. Spanish, never did it. I could, probably order a sangria if I went to Spain, or a beer, but that was about the extent of my Spanish. And I couldn't see, like 4 years, at the age of 17, 4 years seemed like forever, that I was going to be tying myself into this thing forever. And this is where I suppose the panic set in me, because I just didn't know. I didn't know who I was and I didn't know what I wanted. And by the way, that is a big theme in this podcast, knowing who you are and knowing what you want. And you're probably thinking, what has this got to do with your style? But stick with me, it does. Because if you don't know who you are going to be like just buying anything and everything, the latest trends, and you know yourself, you end up with lots of clothes and nothing to wear. But this was the start of me not having direction. I was like a ship at sea without an anchor or a compass or a rudder, and I was just drifting. So all this uncertainty and I guess loss of control or direction led to me developing a fairly unhealthy relationship with eating and bad habits that came with that, which lasted for many years. And for me, that stemmed from just this not knowing what was coming next. So that kind of was developed into like body image issues and all of these things that a lot of us probably grew up with. You know, you were surrounded by magazines that was just about body shaming and the next diet you should be on. So much toxic stuff that we were exposed to, and who wore it best, and pitting women against each other. When I look back at it now, like, it's so bad. How did we even survive it? And this was before social media, or at least, you know, at the early stages of social media. So I dropped out of college because I knew I wasn't going to be there for 4 years. And I went and started working in a bank. And I was like, oh, brilliant, I've got money. I started to have my own disposable income, which was great. But again, it was like this day in, day out, going into kind of a dark office environment. I was like, I know this is not me either. And I was still determined to tick that box of going to college. So I ended up going back to college and studying management, tourism management. And I got through it, and I think I got through that and I stuck with it because I had great friends. I met fantastic friends during that time. The highlight for me was catching up with them, you know, having coffees and really helping each other out throughout that time and just having fun with it. Didn't have much growth for that course either, apart from I excelled in accounting, which surprised myself because back in school I couldn't think of anything worse and I thought I was pretty bad at it. Turns out your teachers play a big part in how you perform in something. You've got to have a good teacher. If you have a good teacher who can explain something in simple terms, it makes all the difference. So I was actually really good at accounting, and I nearly went down that route as well. So while I was in college, the other thing that I took up was belly dancing. And this was a revelation to me, especially coming from this place where like body shaming and body image issues and like bad habits and bad relationships with food and everything. This dance blew my mind. I got into it because I thought, ooh, this is kind of sexy. But actually, the more I learned about it, I was like, oh, wow, this is a revelation, because we were celebrating our wobbly bits for the first time. And this was completely new to me. This absolutely was liberating, I think, in terms of letting go of a lot of the body stuff that was going on for me. As well as that, it was a very kind of safe place that was, you know, just women, and, you know, you could just dance and express yourself. And it was a wonderful discovery for me. And I actually went on to teach that and met some fantastic students along the way and other dance teachers too. So belly dancing was, and still is, a big part of my life, even though I don't do it anymore. In a way, it kind of saved me because it tapped into something I was actually passionate about. It triggered something in me, and also the teaching of it. I really enjoyed teaching things. And actually, I went on to become an English teacher then. I found out that I was actually a very good teacher, and it was something I loved to do. I loved helping people make sense of something that was beyond their scope. When I think back to my own teachers and good teachers and bad teachers and the effect that they had on me, I knew it was a big responsibility to be a teacher, and to be a good teacher was really important to me. So being able to explain things in a usable way, that you could actually apply things in real life, was really important to me. So that was something I really enjoyed. But I was still lacking a sense of direction or purpose. It was kind of being pieced together unbeknownst to myself. I was getting there, but I still I couldn't imagine the future. And also this feeling of wanting to run my own business, be my own boss, that was still in me. That would not go away. That was the one thing that was consistent within me throughout life, and that would not go away. So any time that I was working for somebody else, I felt that just a little bit of being unsettled, because I knew that was something I had to try. I just didn't know what it was going to be. So in my search to, explore what else was out there in the world, I went and up to moved country and moved to Dubai, where I was cabin crew for about 8 years. And I always say to people, I've ended up in many places, few of them intentionally. If you apply that to your wardrobe and what's in there, I think you can probably relate. You end up with a lot of stuff, and few of it is very intentional. That was kind of the story of my life. Being cabin crew was great because it was an adventure. And adventure is a value of mine. I have to be exploring, I have to be learning. Things have to excite me. And, I wasn't getting that from like day in, day out, the same routines. Whereas being cabin crew, you never knew what was going to happen on a day. I mean, I had a woman go into labor on my flight. There was, diversions. There was lots of people fainting on a regular basis. Working under pressure, that was all very exciting. It felt alive to me. And I was able to explore the world as well. I've been to over 80 countries and I've lived in Dubai, obviously Ireland, but also France and Portugal. Adventure and learning and curiosity for new things is a big part of who I am as a person. I was learning that as I went along, but by this stage I was like already 25. And again, got this kind of sense of new adventure. And I still had that in the back of my mind. It's like, you want to work for yourself. You want to work for yourself. And that was something that would not leave me. So you might call it serendipity or coincidence if you believe in that. But I met somebody when I was about 27. So I was a couple of years in Dubai at this stage. And he introduced me to something called NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And it piqued my curiosity because me being me, I want to learn something. I was getting really curious about human behavior. And I thought, ooh, tell me more about this NLP. Okay. So I did my research and found out that there was a course back home in Ireland that I could do, bit by bit while I was on vacation. So on my holidays, I flew back to Ireland and I started studying NLP to try and make sense of my own head and see where it might lead me. And this was fascinating to me. I found this incredibly helpful. I found great clarity for myself. I started moving with a little bit more intention and direction, and I was getting clear about who I was as a person. Because I found that so useful, I then became a coach using neuro-linguistic programming. I became a mind coach. So this was all about, tackling the mindset. And I put it to the test. So I started thinking, okay, let's put this NLP stuff to the test, right? So I wanted to start testing my own limiting beliefs. What had I been telling myself that I believed was fact, but actually it was more like fiction? So I started doing things like I tried skydiving. Could I bring myself to jump out of a plane? I went traveling by myself. I stayed in the Amazon jungle for 3 nights without electricity or, in a very basic hut that didn't even have windows, and hiking the Inca Trail. And I became a scuba diver, and I was like seeking out sharks, not in a cage, but in the open water, me and sharks and hundreds of sharks. And I found that I loved all of these things that made me feel alive. This adventure it reminded me that I was alive and I needed this. And I started to realize what I was capable of. But one belief that I had about myself was I'm not a runner. Don't ask me to run. I will do pretty much everything else, but don't ask me to run. I was of the firm belief that some people were just built differently. Some were built for running and others were not. And I was the person that was not. And I understood, thanks to NLP, I was like, okay, here's a limiting belief. Is this actual fact? And I set out to prove myself wrong, because if I could prove myself wrong, then what else was I wrong about? And it would open up a whole load of opportunities and possibilities to me. So I set myself a goal of the 10-kilometer mini marathon in Dublin. Now, I know there's like marathon runners out there and you're like, Sarah, you couldn't do a 10K run. But to me, this was my Everest. This might as well have been an Ironman. It was something that I truly believed I could not run. Walk, yeah. Don't ask me to run it. So I had a deadline. I think the mini marathon's on every June bank holiday weekend. And I set about running little by little. And I was like, hold on, maybe I can do this. And every day I was running a little bit more. And lo and behold, I ran the 10 kilometers in a really good time. I can't remember what it was now, under an hour. And to me, that, I was going to say it broke something in my brain. It didn't quite break my brain, but it broke a limiting belief in me. And I said, okay, I was wrong about that. What else was I wrong about? What have I been believing, or even what have I inherited? Beliefs that I have inherited that are not correct. They're not facts. So I was testing out all of these things through mind coaching and helping others do the same. So I was coached. This is before I went into style coaching. I was helping people, getting clear on what they wanted and helping them achieve that, and breaking down limiting beliefs, and, anything that came up, we challenged. And this is when I started my business. So many of you don't know that I had a business before I was the style coach. I had a business called Live Your Authentic Life, which was all coaching based, simply mind coaching. The premise behind that was knowing who you are and knowing what you want. Because I believe if you know who you are, in terms of, like I mentioned here, values, adventure was a value of mine, curiosity, these are all values. And I didn't know these existed in me until I tested them out. But they were always there. They just needed to be uncovered. So living authentically, aligning with the things you actually wanted in life. That was my first business, and helping others do that. Now, I didn't find my niche in that. And that's when I was like, do you know what? What else would I do, even if I wasn't paid? That great question, that you can ask yourself and start dreaming. And something that I loved was the feeling that I got when I put on clothes that I liked. That to me was transformational. The power that putting the right outfit on, the way you walk differently, the way you interact with people differently, the way other people interact with you, it was like a magic switch. And to me, it was wellness. I say that to people all the time, that, thinking about clothes and what you're wearing, it's not vanity. It's wellness. And I definitely saw this connection between mind coaching and style. Because if you don't know who you are, your style is never going to feel like your own. It's going to feel like a costume. But when everything is aligned, there's magic there. There's absolute magic, and there's freedom, there's liberation in it. So I found it incredibly powerful, this combination of mind coaching and style coaching. And that was when the Style Coach was born, and I started my YouTube channel, which was about 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago. And that gained a good bit of traction because of, color analysis that I would do on my channel. People love that. And I totally get it. It's great to see the process. And, I got a lot of interest through color analysis. But I always say to people, color analysis is it's like garlic. You don't go into a shop and buy a bulb of garlic and expect to have a wholesome meal. No, it's an ingredient to a bigger picture. But we'll get into all of that in other episodes. So that is my current business now. I help women reclaim their identity and their style. And I've worked with countless women across 5 continents at this stage, through my online courses, my school community, and of course my one-to-one clients. I've spoken at many events for different international companies, both online and in person, which is something I love to do as well. The key message here, I hope you can realize, is that it wasn't smooth sailing for me. I learned along the way how to tap into who I want to be, who I am and who I want to be, and of course what that looks like as an expression of myself. It took obviously years to get there, but the thing to notice here is, I look back on all the various avenues that I went down, and at each stage where I wasn't sure of who I was or what I was doing with my life, I see that as an expression in my style. It was all over the place. I mean, I was so influenced by what the latest trends were. I mean, I lived in the hugely image conscious Dubai for 8 years, and I worked in a very image conscious industry as well. Anytime there was uncertainty about direction or about who I was or doubts about myself, it manifested in my wardrobe. I was buying terrible things that were not really a reflection of myself at all, but felt like these are the things I should be wearing. I'm whatever age, this is what I should be wearing, and more limiting beliefs. The chaos that was in my mind manifested in my wardrobe. And the funny thing is about all of this, I managed to put outfits together and everything, and kind of, whatever I go into, I do it well. I never do things, even though I'm not sure if it's the right direction. If I say I'll do something, I'll do it well. So whether that was belly dancing or teaching or working in the bank or, anything like that, I'll give it my all, my 100%. And I'll always kind of make an effort in terms of how I dress for such occasions and things like that. But had you asked anybody that knew me during this time, what was Sarah like? They would probably say to you, oh, Sarah's really confident. Wow, if only I had half your confidence. And I always had to laugh when people said this to me, because I did not feel confident. I borrowed confidence from what I was wearing. And that was kind of, it's short term, because at the end of the day, you take the clothes off and you're still in your own head. So I had to learn how to build that confidence from the inside and not only rely on the clothes. I always say to people, learn how to put a great outfit together, but build the confidence to not have to rely on it. That's the key. Building the confidence will allow you to break free of your own prison of your mind, where you're telling yourself, oh, I can't wear that. I wouldn't look good in that. Oh, I'm this age, I can't wear that. Building that confidence from the inside is something you really need to do. It took time for me to do that, because I wasn't ticking the boxes that people say you should tick, right? Society, right? So you go to college. Okay, I did that. I dropped out, but I went back and got a degree. You get a boyfriend, you get married, you have kids, you tick the boxes. I am 40. I am not married and I don't have kids. I am still not ticking the boxes, but you know what? I am okay with that. These are down to my choices now. I am not responding to what society is telling me to do, because that is or was part of the problem for me. I was being dictated to from all of these things I thought I should be doing, while neglecting my own voice, not listening to the internal compass that I already had. I just didn't know how to tune into it. So that is a little bit about my story. It hasn't been smooth sailing. I haven't taken a conventional path, but hopefully it's given you a little bit of an idea of, my own story and how I got to the work that I'm doing and why I'm so passionate, not about necessarily color analysis. I think that's great fun, but more about getting to know who you are, especially after big changes in life. They can knock you for six. And that's what I hear from my clients all the time. You know, when they get in touch, most people have just been through something significant and they've lost sight of themselves. They have made their career their identity, or their partner their identity. And these are roles that we have, but roles come and go throughout life. Knowing who you are beyond these roles is really important. And this is what I like to dig down into with my clients, because that is going to shape what your wardrobe looks like. Your wardrobe is the icing on the cake. You wouldn't try to put icing on a cake if you didn't already have the cake. You are the cake. You are the delicious cake. And it's about getting to know your own ingredients. And then once you are clear on that, then you can make great choices from there. And I'm not just talking about your wardrobe here. I'm talking about everything. When you're clear on what it is that you want for yourself in life, who you are, that dictates everything. Absolutely everything. And we'll get into all this. So that's it for this first episode. I hope you enjoyed getting to know me a little bit more, and hopefully you come back for our next episode, and we'll be talking a lot more about all these things that I've touched on today. Less about me, but more about you and my experiences with my clients. So I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. Bye.